The movie starts in New York City in 2022, a city that has become overcrowded with 40 million people. A man named Thorn, who works as a detective, wakes up from his sleep. He looks tired as he gets up and turns on the television. The host of the show is talking about Soylent Green, a high-energy food concentrate. The host is interviewing Governor Henry Santini. He reminds the audience that the coming Tuesday will be Soylent Green Day and then invites the governor to explain more. Before the governor can speak, Thorn's friend, Sol Roth, turns off the TV. Sol is not interested in the program. Thorn asks Sol about the case he gave him to study. Sol explains what he found, mentioning two names, saying one is a killer and the other is a rapper. When Thorn asks about another man, Sol reminds him that it has only been 3 days and he still needs more time to find the files. Thorn says he wants to finish the case quickly so he can move on to other work, but Sol refuses because he needs more time to complete it properly. While they are talking, Thorn starts eating some food, but Sol isn't hungry. Sol complains that the food has no taste or smell, but Thorn continues eating. Suddenly, the lights start flickering. Seeing this, Sol gets up and starts pedaling a bicycle that generates electricity to bring the power back. Thorn gets ready to leave for his work shift. He arms himself, and before heading out, he tells Sol to eat some Soylent Green to calm down. Sol replies that he already ate it the day before. Thorn jokes that Sol should stop generating electricity or he might give himself a heart attack, then says he might be home late. Thorn carefully makes his way down the stairs, jumping over people sleeping on them without touching anyone. The next day, the city is even more crowded, and the people look like they are suffering. Donovan approaches a young man named Gilbert. He tells Gilbert that he has something for him and asks him to come inside the car to talk. Without hesitation, Gilbert gets into the car. Donovan hands him a metal hook. Gilbert accepts it and sets it into place, already understanding that he is being sent on a mission to kill someone. Meanwhile, a young woman named Cheryl is at home, keeping herself busy by playing a video game on her computer. Her home is luxurious, and she is having fun. At that moment, Simonson, who is much older than Cheryl and also her husband, comes to see her. Cheryl thanks him for a gift he gave her and asks him to do something for her, but their conversation is interrupted when Simonson's bodyguard enters and tells Cheryl that they need to go to the market. Simonson tells her to go, and after she leaves with the bodyguard, Simonson looks uncomfortable and uneasy. At the market, the seller, Brady, tells them the food they bought costs $279. Before paying, Cheryl reminds Brady about the special request she had made earlier. Brady then leads her inside the store and shows her a special piece of beef that was prepared just for her. That night, Gilbert tries to jump over a fence. He digs at the rocks to make it easier to climb and manages to sneak into the luxury apartment building without anyone noticing him. Gilbert then enters Simonson's house, holding the metal hook. Simonson sees him and asks what he is doing there. Gilbert pretends that he only wants to talk to him. Simonson starts to calm down, but while they are talking, Gilbert uses the moment to attack Simonson from behind and kills him. Later, Detective Thorn arrives at the apartment to investigate. He asks Charles, who works there, about the owner. Charles tells him that Simonson was still alive at 10:35 p.m. He also says that he hasn't seen anything like this in many years and mentions that the scanners and alarms were not working. After that, Charles takes Thorn to Simonson's apartment. Before going inside, Thorn tells him to wait outside. Thorn then shows his police ID to Cheryl and Tab to prove that he is a police officer. Tab leads Thorn to Simonson's dead body and gives him some information about Simonson. Thorn asks Tab to bring him a bottle. At first, Tab refuses, but Thorn tells him that his contract is now cancelled, meaning he will no longer work for Simonson. After hearing that, Tab gives Thorn the whiskey bottle, but he keeps a close watch on Thorn. Tab explains that he had been at the market with Cheryl earlier. After Thorn confirms that Tab knows how to write, he orders him to go down to the foyer and write a statement, including all the important details. Tab agrees and leaves to do it. Thorn then washes his face with soap. Afterward, he collects the soap, towel, and the whiskey bottle, stuffing all of them into a pillowcase to take with him. Later, Cheryl feels guilty and blames herself. She tells Tab that Simonson might not have died if they hadn't left him alone to go shopping. Tab tries to comfort her, explaining that it is not their fault and reminding her that Simonson was the one who told them to go shopping. As they are talking, Thorn interrupts and calls Cheryl over, saying he wants to have a conversation with her. Thorn quickly examines Cheryl's hands and other parts of her body. He asks her if Simonson ever abused her. Cheryl reassures him that Simonson never did anything wrong and that he was a true gentleman. She also mentions that Simonson had wished he could leave forever. Then there is a knock at the door. Tab informs them that the sanitation team has arrived. Before Cheryl leaves, Thorn tells her that he will see her again, and she agrees before departing. After that, a sanitation worker comes inside to take away Simonson's dead body. Cheryl, looking very upset, asks some questions and finds out that Simonson's dead body will be taken to the waste disposal plant. Thorn, not wanting to talk any more with Charles, ignores him and silently joins the sanitation team in the elevator without saying another word. At night, Thorn returns home. As usual, he carefully goes upstairs, making sure not to step on the people sleeping on the stairs. Thorn hands Sol some paper and pencils, and shows him a bar of soap and a book titled Soylent Oceanographic Survey Report, which he took from Simonson's house. The book has 2 volumes. Sol is thankful, but when he sees the bottle of whiskey, he becomes even happier and immediately tastes it. Thorn also gives Sol some meat he stole from Simonson's house. Sol, overwhelmed with emotion, starts crying, showing how happy he is. Then Sol tells Thorn to go back to his work. Before Thorn leaves, Sol suggests that Thorn should return to his original home, but Thorn reassures him that he wants to stay with him. The next day, the police station is crowded with people who are there to collect death benefits. They are lined up on both sides. Thorn arrives and heads into the office of Chief Detective Hatcher. Hatcher gives Thorn his watch to fix, and at first, they talk about the watch. Then the conversation shifts to the Simonson case. Hatcher signs a paper giving Thorn permission to continue working on the case. Hatcher also asks Thorn about Sol's condition. Thorn answers that Sol is doing well and then goes back to fixing the watch. Thorn tells Hatcher that Simonson's death was not random but looks more like an assassination. He explains that the alarm system had been offline for the first time in 2 years, and the killer used a hook instead of a gun to kill Simonson. Hatcher asks Thorn if he took anything, but Thorn reassures him that he can handle everything. Before Thorn leaves the office, he tosses Hatcher's watch back to him. The next day, the city is crowded and busy, with people rushing to buy food and water, even though resources are running low. Meanwhile, Thorn is watching Tab from a distance. When Tab leaves the building, Thorn hides to avoid being seen. Afterward, Thorn enters the building. Before going upstairs, he shows his police ID to the security guard. The guard then tells him the number of Tab's apartment. Thorn knocks on the door, and Martha, a friend of Tab, is inside eating a strawberry. Before she opens the door, she quickly hides the strawberry but forgets to hide the spoon left on the table. She opens the door after Thorn shows her his police ID. He tells her he wants to see Tab, but she says that Tab has gone out. While talking to her, Thorn casually starts looking around for evidence. He compliments the furniture in the house, and Martha explains that Tab was well paid. Thorn then moves into another room. He notices the forgotten spoon on the table, and when Martha tries to quickly hide it, he calls her into the room. As Thorn is about to leave, Martha tells him she could have offered him something. Thorn replies that he would have accepted if he had more time, and then he leaves. Martha realizes that Thorn has taken the spoon. She feels frustrated because she never expected Thorn to steal it, but she knows there is nothing she can do about it. At night, Sol prepares a dinner using the beef and vegetables that Thorn brought from Simonson's house. They enjoy their meal together. Sol is very satisfied. It is clear from his face that it has been a long time since he has eaten such luxurious food. He looks happier than usual, showing that he hasn't had a meal like this in years. While they are eating, Sol shares what he has discovered about Simonson's case. He explains that Simonson was a major partner of Governor Santini, which catches Thorn's interest. Sol continues, saying that Simonson was also a director at Hulcox Manufacturing and a specialist in commercial food processing. In addition, Simonson was a board member of Soylent, which was a very powerful position. Before Thorn leaves, Sol offers him a spoon and asks him to taste something. Thorn at first refuses, but Sol insists. He reveals that it is a strawberry, which costs $150. Without saying anything, Thorn leaves. Afterward, Thorn is on his way when he suddenly panics after hearing a noise behind him. He looks around carefully but doesn't see anyone nearby. Quickly, Thorn calls Hatcher. He tells him that he is still investigating Simonson's case and shares that Simonson was a director at Soylent. Thorn also mentions that he feels like someone is following him. Hatcher tells him to report everything in the morning, and they end the call. Hatcher is with Donovan during the call. Donovan overhears the conversation between Hatcher and Thorn. Afterward, Donovan tells Hatcher that the department wants to work together with the governor's office. Hatcher agrees immediately without any hesitation. Later that night, Cheryl hosts a small party at her home. The house is filled with her friends. Some are playing games, while others are drinking and smoking, enjoying themselves. Suddenly, there is a knock at the door. Cheryl checks who it is, and when she realizes it's Thorn, she opens the door. Thorn is surprised when he sees all of Cheryl's friends at the apartment. He casually takes a glass of whiskey from one woman and a cigarette from another, joking that he would smoke more if he had enough money. Right after that, Cheryl and Thorn go into the bedroom together. Thorn tells her to get on the bed, and without hesitation, she agrees. While they are alone, Thorn asks Cheryl if Simonson had any friends. At first, she hesitates but then reveals some of Simonson's connections, mentioning Santini's name. Thorn becomes more interested but decides not to ask more questions. Cheryl takes off her clothes and gets ready, and Thorn soon joins her. They spend some intimate time together. Suddenly, Charles bursts into Cheryl's apartment. He yells at the other women, blaming them for not keeping watch properly. In his anger, he kicks and slaps some of the women, making them cry and scream as they try to get away from him. Hearing the noise, Thorn comes out of the bedroom. Charles, clearly panicked, quickly tells Thorn that he didn't know he was there. Charles tries to explain that the girls broke the rules and continues to blame them. Thorn calmly tells him that he was the one who called the women over for the investigation. Charles says that Thorn should have informed him, but Thorn stands his ground and demands to know why it matters. Realizing Thorn's authority, Charles quickly changes his tone and says he only wants to be friendly. Thorn notices the woman Charles kicked earlier. He warns Charles indirectly, suggesting that the woman could easily report him too. Thorn then firmly orders Charles to leave. Without saying a word, Charles walks out, while the two women continue crying and their friends gather around to comfort them. Cheryl watches everything unfold and tells Thorn that Charles isn't really a bad person. Thorn says he needs to leave, but Cheryl asks him to stay, saying it's already dark and she will make him breakfast in the morning. Thorn tells her that he has work to do, but Cheryl says she doesn't want to be alone and is worried the new tenant might not keep her. Thorn assures her that he has a place to stay, though it's not as luxurious. Cheryl convinces Thorn to stay by telling him he can take a shower. Thorn asks if there is hot water, and she reassures him that there is. She keeps encouraging him to stay, and Thorn, unable to resist the opportunity, kisses her. They end up taking a bath together, making their night much better than they expected. Afterward, Thorn goes to a nearby church. Before entering, he sees a child tied to his dead mother with a rope by the door. Without hesitation, Thorn picks up the crying child and takes him inside the church. He hands the child to a nurse for protection. Thorn then goes further inside the church to meet a priest named Paul. Paul is busy fixing a bed. When he finds out that Thorn is a police officer, he asks why he is there. Thorn explains that he is investigating Simonson's death. At first, Paul ignores the topic but then mentions Simonson, calling him a rich man. Paul goes on to say that there will soon be no rich people left and that they are struggling to help the poor. Thorn asks Paul what Simonson had told him before his death. Paul tells him to come back the next day. Thorn pressures Paul, stressing how important the case is. Paul admits that the truth is tearing him apart, but no matter how many times Thorn asks, Paul refuses to reveal what the truth about Simonson is. The next day, Thorn is in Hatcher's office. Hatcher gives him a paper to sign to officially close Simonson's case. Thorn is confused because they had already agreed that Simonson's death was an assassination, and Hatcher knows it. Thorn makes it clear that he will not lie on the report. Hatcher asks if Thorn has any suspects. Thorn tells him that he has a lead. When Hatcher laughs at him, Thorn reminds him that this isn't something he just made up overnight and forgot about. Ignoring Thorn's concerns, Hatcher tells him that once he signs the paper, the case will be buried. But Thorn refuses to back down. He questions Hatcher's honesty and reminds him that Simonson was a corporate director at Soylent and was murdered with a hook. Hatcher then admits that higher authorities want the case closed. Still, Thorn refuses to sign the paper and leaves the office without signing it. On his way out, another officer hands Thorn a helmet for riot control. Meanwhile, Donovan is worried about the situation. He goes to Governor Santini and tells him that he has an urgent matter to report. Donovan explains that Simonson's case is still not closed. Santini panics because he believed the case was already settled. Donovan adds that the police officer refused to close it and even went to the church for further investigation, spending about 20 minutes there. Hearing this, Governor Santini orders Donovan to take immediate action. Afterward, people are standing in a long line, waiting to confess to their priest. When it is his turn, Tab enters the small confession room. He tells Paul that it has been 6 months since his last confession and asks for forgiveness for his sins. Before Paul can respond, Tab pulls out a silenced gun and shoots him, killing him instantly. Then Tab leaves quietly. Meanwhile, the city is crowded with people buying and selling food. When a woman openly complains in public, a police officer comes to arrest her. Thorn, who is on riot duty, wears his helmet and monitors the situation across the city. Nearby, Gilbert is secretly watching and following him. At the same time, police officers announce that people must leave because the supply of Soylent Green has run out, and they must clear the area before the scoops arrive. However, the crowd refuses to move. They scream and shout at the officers, blaming them and reminding them that it is supposed to be Soylent Green Day. Suddenly, chaos breaks out between the police and the crowd. The scoop vehicles arrive to push people away. In the middle of the confusion, Gilbert tries to shoot Thorn. However, his first shot hits a woman standing beside Thorn by mistake. Gilbert fires again but misses Thorn and hits another person. Thorn spots Gilbert and chases him, but Gilbert quickly shoots Thorn in the leg. Before Gilbert can escape, a scoop vehicle runs him over, leaving him lifeless. Thorn hides inside Tab's house. When Tab comes in, he asks Martha why she opened the door. Before they can continue talking, Thorn suddenly kicks Tab. Thorn demands to know why Tab helped set up Simonson's death, but Tab denies everything. Thorn keeps kicking him, and Tab finally says that he will not fight against a police officer. Martha tries to attack Thorn, but he easily slaps her away. Seeing this, Tab steps in and kicks Thorn. However, Thorn quickly regains control and kicks Tab again. Before Thorn leaves, he warns Tab that if anyone follows him again, he will not hesitate to kill them. Later, Thorn goes to Cheryl's house. She is surprised to see him. Thorn tells her that he was worried about her and hugs her. When Cheryl asks what happened to him, he refuses to explain, only saying that it doesn't matter. Meanwhile, Sol goes to the Supreme Exchange bookstore. He continues searching for evidence related to Simonson's case and the oceanographic reports. Sol shares his thoughts with the other elderly people there. He tells them that it involves Simonson and hands the Oceanographic Survey report book to an old woman for her to review. Cheryl takes care of Thorn and stitches his wound. She suggests that he report the case to the police, but Thorn refuses. He explains that if he does, they will remove him from his job. She even proposes that he move to another city, but Thorn is too focused on Simonson's case and rejects her idea. Cheryl then tells him that a new tenant is coming that night. Thorn reassures her that the tenant will like her, but this makes Cheryl feel upset. It is clear she has feelings for Thorn. She tells him not to say things like that again. Afterward, Thorn leaves the house to continue his investigation. The head of the Supreme Exchange tells Sol the truth. She explains that Simonson was a member of the board and knew all the secrets. The corporation realized he was no longer trustworthy and feared he would expose their secret, so they had him killed. Hearing the truth, Sol struggles to process the situation and hesitates, feeling overwhelmed. Meanwhile, the new tenant arrives at Cheryl's apartment. He is younger than Simonson. He tells Cheryl that he stays up late, likes a big breakfast but doesn't want lunch, and says he will handle dinner himself. He also mentions that he sometimes brings friends over and likes to have fun with lively girls. Afterward, Sol feels heartbroken about the truth and decides to end his life. He goes to a government-run euthanasia center, known as Going Home. A nurse welcomes him warmly. There are also other people inside the center, waiting. Meanwhile, Thorn returns home and finds a note left by Sol, explaining that he has gone home. Realizing what it means, Thorn quickly rushes out to search for his friend Sol. Sol chooses an orange color theme and light classical music for his euthanasia process. He signs a paper confirming that he agrees to the procedure. A nurse then takes him to the assigned room. Sol gets onto the bed with the help of the nurses, removes his clothes, and they leave him alone after giving him the medicine that will end his life. Meanwhile, Thorn arrives at the center. The nurse leads him to a viewing room where he can see Sol through a window. When the window closes, Sol watches a peaceful video playing on a large screen. Thorn demands that the nurse open the window. After some pressure, the nurse plugs in a flash drive and reopens the window for Thorn. Thorn speaks to Sol through a microphone. Sol thanks Thorn for coming to see him and tells him that he loves him. Thorn, unable to do anything to save his friend, feels deeply sad. After a short conversation, Sol asks Thorn to make sure his body is sent to the processing center. He also urges Thorn to uncover the full truth and report it to the exchange. Soon after, Sol's life comes to an end. Meanwhile, Thorn secretly follows the nurses as they move Sol's body to the basement. There, he sees dead bodies being loaded onto waste disposal trucks. Suddenly, Thorn jumps onto one of the trucks without anyone noticing, hoping to discover the truth. The truck drives to a different facility that is heavily guarded by armed security officers. Even the driver is not allowed to enter the building. However, Thorn manages to sneak inside by hiding on the roof of the truck. Thorn watches as a dead body is taken into another room. He sees the corpses being fed into a huge machine, where they are processed and turned into Soylent Green wafers. A long conveyor belt, stretching several hundred yards, carries the remains into the machine at one end, and at the other end, the well-known Soylent Green wafers come out. Suddenly, two workers spot Thorn. Thorn tries to run, but when they come to attack him, he fights back and manages to kick them both, one after the other. He then jumps onto a truck and escapes the scene. Afterward, Thorn returns to the city and tries to call Hatcher, but Hatcher is already on another call. Taking the chance, Thorn calls Cheryl. She tells him that the new tenant wants her to stay. Thorn tells her to stay with the new tenant. When Hatcher finally interrupts the call, Thorn quickly hangs up on Cheryl and talks with Hatcher. However, their conversation is cut short when a group of men opens fire on Thorn. Thorn fights back and kills two of the attackers, but Tab manages to shoot Thorn in the chest. Thorn, though badly hurt, escapes and hides in a church where many people are sleeping on the floor. Tab follows Thorn and slowly enters the church. He looks around, confused about where Thorn is hiding. As Tab searches, he hears a sound behind him and, in panic, accidentally shoots the wrong person. Taking the opportunity, Thorn manages to disarm Tab. However, Tab fights back by kicking Thorn again and again. He then pulls out a gun to shoot him, but before he can fire, Thorn grabs a knife and stabs Tab in the chest. Slowly, Tab collapses to the ground. At the end, Hatcher arrives with other police officers. Thorn tells Hatcher to go to the exchange and confirm that they were right. He explains that he saw it with his own eyes. The oceans and plankton are dying, and the truth is that Soylent Green is made from people. As the officers take Thorn away, he shouts loudly, once again revealing that Soylent Green is made of people.